We are now going to start studying the physics portion of physical science, and we are going to start that study with motion and forces. And so to discuss motion and forces, we'll need to first discuss Newton. You guys have probably all heard of Newton. There's that really famous old tale of an apple falling on his head and him coming up with the idea of gravity, which is sort of a funny story because it never actually happened, but everyone thinks that it did. All right, so here is a quote from Newton. He said, "If I have seen far, it is because I have stood on the shoulders of giants." And he was referring to Galileo's work. So Newton came up with the 3 laws of motion. So Newton's first law states an object at rest will remain at rest, and an object in motion will continue moving at a constant velocity unless acted upon by a net force. Okay, this was Newton's own language. This is how he stated his first law. But let's break this down and say, well, what is this really saying? What does this really mean? So what he's saying with his first law is that if an object is not moving, it's going to continue to not move unless something acts on it, something goes up and puts it into motion, starts it moving, okay? And in the same way, an object that is in motion will continue to stay in motion unless something acts on it to stop its motion. Okay, so that's Newton's first law. Newton's second law, in his own words, states that the acceleration of an object is directly proportional to the net force acting on it and inversely proportional to its mass. And that's where we're going to get this equation. Force equals mass times acceleration. And we will be working with this equation soon. Okay, so what does Newton's second law mean? It means that how quickly an object picks up speed, so how quickly it's able to start moving faster, will depend on the force acting on it. So what is helping it to move? And it also depends on the mass of the object. So how heavy is the object? Okay, because if you have more force, you're going to have more acceleration. So more force means picking up speed faster. Okay. If you have more mass, you're going to have less acceleration. Okay, so it's going to take you longer to pick up that speed, okay, because it's heavier. Newton's third law, in his own words, states that when one object exerts a force on a second object, the second object exerts an equal but opposite force on the first. Okay, so let's break down and say, what does this mean? This, stated more simply, is every action has an equal but opposite reaction. Okay, all right, so those are Newton's 3 laws of motion. Take some time to study those because you will need to be able to identify them. And then as we move forwards over the next several days, we are going to study each one of these in more detail.